Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere quiet. Not just peaceful, but deeply, culturally, bureaucratically sleepy. Picture this. You've just filed your final rice tax report in a dimly lit wooden office in Edo period Japan. You've been writing with a brush on mulberry paper for 3 hours. Your back is straight, your tea is warm. Your manager nods at you once, not to speak, but to signal the most sacred part of your workday, nap time. And trust me, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in this office. Not because it's strict, but because the sheer calm might make you dissolve into the floor like a warm mochi. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know in the comments, what time is it where you are and where are you listening from tonight? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit at your desk, low to the floor, smooth lacquered wood, the kind that smells faintly of pine resin and patience. Beside you is a carefully folded cloth, your inkstones still warm, and a single ceramic cup of hojicha, its roasted aroma curling into the air like an exhale. You've just written 17 lines of flawless kanji. Your right shoulder aches a little. Your eyes drift toward the open window, where sunlight filters through a bamboo blind, painting sleepy stripes across the tatami mats. And then, the signal. Not a bell, not a gong, just a small, deliberate knock on the paper wall. 3 times. This is it, the nap hour. Not officially sanctioned, but deeply understood. You slide back from your desk, kneel, fold your hands, bow slightly, and lower yourself onto your left arm. Yes, left side down. Because everyone knows that's the polite direction to face if you plan to nap near superiors. Your cheek meets your sleeve. The smell of rice starch and aged ink comforts you in a way no pillow ever could. Across the room, your coworker, the senior scribe with eyebrows like broom bristles, is already half asleep, chin tucked toward chest, breathing like a satisfied ox. You hear one quiet snore. Not disruptive, almost musical, the soft rustle of robes, the distant clink of teacups. Outside, a crow calls once and then reconsiders. The office becomes a hush. This is not laziness. This is dedication. In Edo period Japan, especially in administrative offices, a well-timed nap was not only accepted, it was respected. To nap was to acknowledge your limits, restore your focus, and display a kind of confident humility. You weren't weak for needing sleep. You were wise enough to make space for it. Some historians still debate how common office napping truly was, whether it was widespread or just practiced in more scholarly circles. But diaries from the era contain repeated mentions of resting after copying, closing the eyes after scroll duty, and even brief cloud-gazing naps during tax season. You shift slightly, careful not to creak the tatami. Because here's the secret. The art of the nap was not just about sleeping. It was about sleeping beautifully, gracefully, like you were part of the room's design. You imagine the scroll you were working on fluttering gently in the breeze, half finished, your ink just beginning to dry. A butterfly might land on it, or not. Either way, the world continues, slowly, quietly, as it should. And in that pause, you find rest. Not just the kind that recharges you, the kind that reminds you, being still is also doing something. Tomorrow, your supervisor will compliment your calligraphy. But tonight, your only task is this: close your eyes, breathe with the paper walls, and let yourself belong to the silence. Because in this office, in this world, a nap is not a break from work. It is the work. You haven't moved, not even a twitch, and that's exactly how it should be. Because in this quiet corner of the Edo bureaucracy, motion is overrated, and noise completely unnecessary. You've become part of the room. Like a decorative scroll or a vase of seasonal flowers someone replaced 2 days ago, but no one wants to disturb. Your arm is comfortably numb under your cheek. Your legs are folded just enough to signal effort, but not enough to suggest you're actually trying. Outside, a sparrow lands briefly on the sill. It peeks in, sees the calm, and politely flutters away, perhaps out of respect. Across the tatami, someone coughs once, the kind of cough that says, "I'm awake but barely." You recognize the voice. It's the assistant ledger keeper, always dramatic, always 2 minutes late for tea, but never one to miss nap protocol. In Edo period Japan, the idea of productivity wasn't tied to constant movement or frantic checking of anything. It was tied to presence. being fully immersed in what you were doing, whether that was translating a scroll, preparing ink, or letting your brain power down for a midday reset. You feel it now. The way your breath syncs with the quiet rustling of someone turning a page. The way the sunlight lazily shifts across the tatami, millimeter by millimeter. The way your body settles, not into sleep exactly, but into a state of permission. You are allowed to rest. In fact, it's expected. In many offices during the Edo period, especially among government scribes and town clerks, it was understood that long stretches of copying, accounting, or correspondence were mentally demanding. A short rest, what we might call a power nap today, was seen not only as helpful, but practically professional. Of course, there were rules. Rule 1, never snore louder than your supervisor. Rule 2, if you drool, wipe it quietly. Rule 3, always sit up gracefully, as though you were pondering a philosophical concept, not dreaming about eel sushi. Some historians note that certain office workers even trained themselves to nap in 30-minute intervals, enough to refresh the mind, not enough to enter that part of sleep where dreams got weird and involved talking foxes. One famous official was said to schedule 2 short naps per day, once before the midday tea, once after, and credited them for his famously legible handwriting. You shift slightly. The bamboo screen flutters in a gentle breeze. Somewhere in the hallway, a servant walks by with soft steps carrying a kettle. The smell of roasted tea seeps into the air, mingling with the comforting scent of pressed paper and ink. And just like that, your mind begins to drift. Not in a chaotic way, in a leaf-floating, downstream kind of way. You think briefly about your unfinished report, the tally of rice shipments from the northern villages. But it doesn't stress you. It waits patiently. It knows you'll return sharper, smoother, more accurate. Because that's what a rested mind does. It remembers the right names. It draws cleaner characters. It doesn't mix up tax records with your grocery list again. A soft bell chimes from deeper inside the building, not to wake you, but to suggest that the tea water is ready. A gentle reminder, not a summons. And still, you don't move. Not yet. Because something inside you, something ancient and respectful, understands that in Edo period office culture, rest wasn't the opposite of work. It was part of the rhythm. The inhale before the brush touches the paper again, the bow before the next task, the sleep before the wisdom. So you let yourself stay where you are, cheek against sleeve, breath steady, mind quiet. Outside the breeze stirs, inside no one rushes, and for now, neither do you. The room hasn't changed, but time has stretched, like warm mochi pulled gently between fingers. You're still there, resting on your folded arm, the gentle weight of silence holding you in place, like the last petal on a plum blossom tree. You shift just enough to relieve the tingling in your foot, careful not to disturb the serenity. Your eyes remain half closed. Not fully asleep, not fully awake. Balanced perfectly in what the Edo clerks might have called soft idleness. It wasn't laziness. No. It was a discipline of stillness. In fact, many office workers during the Edo period believed that a midday nap helped keep the body aligned. Not just physically, but spiritually. A well-timed rest ensured the flow of ki, or life energy, wouldn't get tangled between ledgers and loyalty oaths. You begin to notice things in this quiet. The brushstroke of someone's calligraphy, still drying. The subtle crackle of tatami beneath shifting weight. The faint scent of cedar from the ceiling beams. Wood that has absorbed so many days of breath, of thoughts paused mid-scroll, of ink that waited patiently while someone dreamed. A low murmuring starts behind a shoji screen. A supervisor discussing the tone of a letter with another official. Not the content, just the tone. Should it be firm, gentle, disappointed, but polite? You smile to yourself. That's the kind of attention this place runs on. The philosophy was simple. Better to do a task slowly and beautifully than quickly and carelessly. And naps, they made beauty possible. Some historians note that during the peak of Edo-era administrative work, offices were designed not for maximum output, but for rhythmic working, bursts of activity followed by intentional stillness. Desks were low, light was filtered. Shoes were left outside not just for cleanliness, but to signal quiet intention. Even the ink was part of the rhythm. It took time to grind ink from a stick. You couldn't rush it. You wouldn't even try, so why would you rush your mind? You lean your head slightly toward the window, letting the filtered light wash over your cheek. It's warm now, the kind of warmth that makes eyelids heavier than your thoughts. A clerk walks softly past you with a tray. On it, a single rice cracker and a folded note. The note reads, "If you dream of koi fish again, please sketch them. We are starting a dream ledger." You blink slowly, smile faintly. Apparently your last nap made an impression. You didn't mean to dream, it just happened. And now it might be part of office records. There's something deeply comforting about that. In this world, even your sleep is worth archiving. You hear a soft rustle, someone nearby adjusting their kimono, preparing to sit up. But no one hurries. Rising from a nap is its own ritual. You must unfurl like a scroll, slowly, deliberately, with respect. You remain still a while longer, because rising too soon breaks the spell, and here, spells, even bureaucratic ones, are worth honoring. Outside, the breeze carries the scent of plum blossoms. You think of a haiku someone pinned to the office wall last week. Ink dries in the sun, stillness holds the ledger firm. Tea waits without blame. You think that person gets it, and you let your body stay soft, your mind stay slow, your breath stay steady. Because in the Edo office, a nap was never just sleep. It was a pause in the ink, a breath in the brushstroke, a sacred part of the workday that said, your mind deserves a garden too. The light in the room has shifted again, a little deeper, a little rounder. Afternoon is starting to wrap itself gently around the beams and screens, turning gold to amber. You open your eyes just slightly and catch the dance of dust in a sunbeam, like tiny ink strokes floating midair. You haven't spoken in... how long? You don't need to. Here, silence does the talking. Across from you, a fellow clerk lifts his head slowly, eyes still half-lidded, and the corners of his mouth turned up in a nap-drunk smile. He folds his hands into his sleeves and lets out a sigh so deep it practically echoes. A good sigh. The kind that says, I just solved 4 imaginary problems in my sleep. You sit up too, but you don't rush it. Rising from a nap in an Edo period office wasn't like jolting awake from a lunch break in a neon-lit break room. It was a practice. You adjusted your posture with intention. You let your spirit settle back into your body. You blinked once, twice, and remembered where the ceiling ends and the sky begins. You reach for your cup of tea. It's lukewarm now, but still full of roasted warmth. Hojicha and dreams, a classic pairing. And there, beside your inkstone, is a slip of paper you don't remember writing, but it's your handwriting. Clouds over rice fields, paper curls in quiet sun, I forgot my name. Apparently you composed a haiku in your sleep. That happens here because naps weren't interruptions. They were creative compost, fertile time, a space where thoughts rearranged themselves into better versions while the body rested. Some scholars believe certain scribes were expected to produce nap poems at least once a week. Others say it was informal, an unspoken contest among the sleepiest minds, a way of showing that even unconscious you were still contributing. You place the haiku in a small lacquered tray labeled Dream Fragments. It sits between trays marked Pending Scrolls and Urgent Rice Tallies. All equally valid. A senior clerk glides into the room, sleeves trailing softly behind him. He doesn't speak. He simply bows slightly and takes a seat. With quiet ceremony, he opens a drawer, removes a small pillow, places it behind his back, and leans. He's not writing today. He's pondering, which is often a fancy word for napping with intent. You look around the room and realize nobody's in a rush to get back to work, because this is the work. Reflection, stillness, the gentle recovery of a mind taxed by brushstrokes and bureaucracy. In fact, during the Edo period, some offices had designated zones called kangaidoko, thinking places. They looked a lot like nap corners. Coincidence? Probably not. Even the furniture understood. You glance at your desk, low, wide, polished smooth by elbows and hours. Its legs are curved just enough to tuck your knees under without complaint. There's no chair. You are the chair. And when you nap, the desk becomes a headrest, a sanctuary, a coworker even. Some desks, historians say, were carved with poems or mantras just beneath the lip, meant to inspire or comfort, or maybe just give you something to read as your face slowly descended toward the wood. You check yours. There's something etched there. To sleep is not to stop. It is to sharpen in stillness. You smile. It's crooked but sincere, like most good things. Outside, the wind picks up slightly. A curtain lifts, revealing the rooftop of the building next door, where another office worker stands, arms raised in a very slow stretch. You wave lazily. He sees you, bows, yawns. This city runs on ink and naps. You take another sip of tea. Lukewarm, yes, but perfect. Tomorrow, you'll explore the strange etiquette around who gets to nap where, and what kind of pillow politics kept the office peaceful. But for now, you rest your brush, fold your sleeves, and prepare to drift, not into sleep again, necessarily, but into that soft, sweet in-between space where ideas settle like tea leaves in the bottom of a cup. Still, quiet, useful. The sleeves of your kimono whisper as you shift ever so slightly, settling deeper into the comfort of the desk's edge. Your forehead, now rested gently against your folded arms, picks up the faint warmth left by a morning sunbeam, long since moved on, but polite enough to leave a trace. This is where the day breathes, not pauses, breathes. Because in this corner of the Edo period office, you've reached one of the most important aspects of the nap ritual: knowing your place. Not metaphorically. Your exact nap location could say a great deal about who you were, how long you'd been working, and just how loudly you were allowed to snore without social consequences. That's right. We've reached the subject of nap hierarchy. It's more complex than you think. For instance, the head clerk, he gets the best corner of the room, right beneath the hanging scroll of Mount Fuji. It's both symbolic and practical. He's older, carries more mental burdens, and has earned the right to nap with both a pillow and a woven mat under his knees. His naps are long, predictable, almost operatic in their stillness. Then there's you, a mid-level scribe. You've been here a while, long enough to have a preferred desk, a favorite ink brush, and an unspoken claim to the spot beside the east-facing window. You don't use a pillow, too formal. You nap directly on your sleeve. Efficient, modest, trusted. And finally, the junior clerk. Poor soul. He's still new enough that he pretends not to nap, even as his head slowly dips forward like a wilting lotus. He's chosen a spot near the shelf of rice paper, where the rustling hides the sound of his soft breathing. The rest of the room pretends not to notice. It's part of the etiquette. Because in the Edo office, pretending not to nap was the first step toward earning the right to nap openly. You shift your gaze toward the far corner, where two assistants are clearly in the middle of a shared nap protocol. They're back-to-back, seated perfectly upright, heads tilted slightly toward one another, but not touching. It's a buddy system. If one starts to lean too far, the other corrects. It's quiet, coordinated, completely ridiculous, and completely accepted. Some historians believe that offices during this era operated on what could be called a gentle, unspoken rotation, a rhythm where no more than a third of the room should be fully asleep at any given moment. This prevented chaos, fire hazards, and unattended tea kettles. Of course, that rule was more of a guideline. During monsoon season, everyone naps. During tax week, no one naps, except the head clerk, which is his right. There are even references in Edo period manuals to strategic nap signaling, such as placing your fan over your inkstone, or subtly shifting your abacus in a pattern that told others, "Don't bother me unless it's a fire or the shogun." You glance toward the shelf near the entrance, where an ornate wooden box sits, the pillow chest. Inside, a modest collection of communal headrests, all carved from soft cedar, wrapped in cloth, each labeled with a small tag. For the diligent, for the dream-prone, for sore necks, for those with nothing to prove. You've never used one. Yet. You think about it, maybe tomorrow. Outside, you hear the call of a vendor selling sweet bean cakes. The smell drifts into the room, mixes with the cedar and the faint tang of ink, and your stomach growls softly, but not enough to move. Because right now, you're full of quiet, full of balance, and full of the gentle joy that comes from working in a world where rest was ritual and nap location was identity. Tomorrow, you'll learn how pillows became personal property, and how one infamous clerk fought over his with such passion it had to be documented. But tonight, you shift your head just slightly, elbows crossed just so. You belong exactly where you are, in rank, in rhythm, in rest. The pillow box waits silently in the corner, but tonight you don't reach for it, not yet. You're too caught up in watching the slow, ceremonial nap of the head clerk, chin tucked, breath even, hands resting like folded cranes on his lap. His head doesn't tip, his back doesn't slouch. If stillness were a martial art, he'd be a grandmaster. And in this moment, you remember, pillows had rules. This wasn't a grab and snooze culture. In Edo period offices, where formality wove itself into every fold of the kimono and every flick of a calligraphy brush, pillows were personal, symbolic, and occasionally the cause of great drama. You sit back a little farther and glance at your own sleeve pillow. Modest, functional, familiar. But every once in a while, maybe on a rainy day or after an especially long meeting about grain taxation, your eyes wander toward the chest in the corner. That's where they're kept. The kubimakura, wooden neck pillows, hollowed just enough for comfort, carved to support posture, not just heads. Each one different, one shaped like a fox, another wrapped in indigo-dyed cloth with a stitched moon, one rumored to be passed down from a clerk whose dreams predicted the weather. Each pillow bore not just weight, but reputation. Some were gifted, some inherited. One, the pillow of unshakable calm, was so fiercely guarded that it was logged in the office records as personal property, complete with an attached poem. He who rests his neck upon this curve of soft pine wakes wiser, not late. You once witnessed a quiet squabble over a pillow. Two clerks reached for the same one. Neither spoke. They just paused. Eyebrows twitched, sleeves stiffened. And then, a game of rock, paper, fan settled the matter, as was tradition. That match is still talked about. The loser reportedly napped on a bundled scarf out of honor. Some historians believe these pillows were early expressions of individuality within collective spaces. Others see them as extensions of one's rank, subtle markers of status that avoided direct confrontation. But in truth, they were panions, nap allies, soft declarations of one's approach to the bureaucratic dream. You reach into your drawer and pull out a folded cloth, your own makeshift pillow wrap. No carved wood yet, but you're preparing. Slowly, respectfully. The day will come, and when it does, you'll sleep with neck support and dignity. Outside, the light is turning honey-colored. Shadows stretch across the floor like quiet cats. A nearby clerk adjusts his head gently onto a small lacquered rest, the one shaped like a plum blossom. His sigh is almost silent. You feel the urge to close your eyes again, not from exhaustion, but from alignment, the kind of peace that comes from being exactly where you're meant to be, doing exactly what's expected, which in this case is nothing at all. Just rest. Tomorrow you'll learn how emotions were managed with naps, how a well-timed sleep could dissolve irritation, avoid arguments, and even repair bruised egos with more efficiency than a formal apology. But tonight, you fold your hands beneath your chin, turn slightly toward the breeze, and nap, not because you're tired, but because you belong to the rhythm. The wind outside shifts just barely. A breeze finds its way in through the narrow space where the shoji screen doesn't quite meet the frame. It slides across the tatami like a whisper, brushing your cheek with the faint scent of sandalwood and something else. Dried plum? Someone must have opened their lunchbox early. You smile, eyes still closed, and let the thought pass like a drifting cloud. Around you, the office is wrapped in a golden hush, the kind of hush that feels earned, lived in, like the air itself has softened out of respect for the people who fill it. And this is when you remember, sometimes a nap isn't just for the body, it's for the mood. In Edo period offices, napping wasn't only a response to exhaustion, it was a strategy for emotional balance, a way to regulate irritation, quiet frustration, and hit the reset button on a morning filled with smudged ledgers, misplaced seals, and that one coworker who always insists the ink sticks are haunted. They're not. They're just dry. You shift your shoulder and glance across the room. There, the assistant to the tax official. She had a rough start to the day. You could tell by the way her writing brush clattered a little too hard against the stone, by the dramatic sighs, by how she stared at a rice grain stuck to her sleeve for 5 full minutes like it had insulted her ancestors. But now, she's curled in the corner, one arm under her head, a rolled Howery jacket as a makeshift pillow, breathing steady, mood likely restored. Because here in this space, sleep is medicine. Not just for sore shoulders, but for sore feelings. Some clerks even had names for their naps. The mood rebalancer, the courtesy nap, taken before a formal meeting to avoid saying something regrettable. The apology nap, taken after saying something regrettable. You once took a nap titled, "The I can't believe they forgot my birthday again," and woke up with just enough grace not to mention it. Some historians say these emotional naps were more social than personal. That by choosing to rest instead of react, workers contributed to the harmony of the group, the beloved wah. Others believe naps were prescribed by supervisors in the same way we might hand someone a glass of water and say, "Why don't you sit down for a bit?" There are even scrolls describing cooling naps taken after arguments. The offended party would be escorted to a designated quiet room, given tea with crushed shiso leaf, and allowed to nap beside a tiny ceramic frog for good luck. Yes, the frog had a name, Haitzo. You rise gently, knees creaking just a little, a friendly reminder that you've been still for quite some time. You bow toward the center of the room, a silent thanks to the space itself, and stretch slowly, careful not to disturb the scroll above your desk. It reads, "To speak when the mind is fogged is to throw stones into a koi pond. Better to nap, let the water still." You pour yourself a bit of fresh tea from the shared kettle, the handle warm in your hand, steam curling upward like incense without ambition. Tomorrow you'll join the scribes as they begin logging their naps into official notebooks. Yes, really, with details about dreams, timing, and emotional side effects. But for now, you take a sip, let it rest on your tongue, let your shoulders drop. You think maybe, just maybe, that rice grain on your sleeve meant no harm after all. The tea is exactly the right temperature now, warm enough to soothe, cool enough to sip without flinching. You cradle the cup in both hands, not because you have to, but because holding something warm is like holding a pause, and pauses are valuable here. You take another sip and glance across the room where the junior clerk has just woken up from what can only be described as a crisis nap. His hair is slightly askew, his brush tucked behind the wrong ear, and his face carries that specific brand of post-nap confusion. What year is it? Is the ledger done? Who moved my inkstone? He shakes it off, smooths his sleeves, adjusts his posture, and like clockwork, he reaches for a small, cloth-bound notebook. Yes, it's time for nap logging. In many Edo period offices, naps weren't just a private indulgence, they were recorded, cataloged, filed, not always officially, but often enough to become custom. A well-rested clerk was considered more reflective, more productive, and interestingly, more worth documenting. You pull your own log from your drawer, soft pages slightly crinkled from the humidity, tied with a faded ribbon. On the inside cover, you've written your name in brush calligraphy, along with the motto, "A nap remembered is a thought refined." You flip to the most recent page and jot a few lines. Time, just after plum blossom tea. Duration, 1 bell cycle. Dream, a goose in a kimono handed me a scroll I couldn't read. Mood significantly improved, no longer irritated by the sandal creak of the assistant. Notes, consider writing poem titled Elegy for a Flightless Clerk. Across the room, the head clerk sets his own log down beside a completed tax report. Rumor has it he once dreamed an entire solution to a misaligned land registry, including coordinates, family names, and the correct spelling of a town no one had visited in 30 years. No one dared question it. The dream log was signed and sealed. Some dream entries in these logs were purely poetic, others practical. A few utterly strange. Dreamed of writing reports with my toes, paper more accurate. Ink flowed uphill. Supervisor applauded. I wept joyfully. Haitzo the frog spoke. We agreed to speak again tomorrow. Many historians believe these logs were part of a broader cultural respect for dreams. Not mystical prophecies, necessarily, but quiet messages from a part of the mind more observant than the waking self. Dreams revealed tone, temperament, subconscious solutions. And naps? They were the fishing nets you cast into that still water. Not everyone took dream logging seriously. Some entries were jokes, others vague cover-ups for longer than approved snoozes. But the ritual mattered. The act of paying attention to something you didn't plan, didn't control, but still valued enough to write down. You dip your brush once, twice, and sketch a small image beside your entry, a cloud shaped like a goose. Satisfying. You close the book gently and place it beneath your desk mat, where it will rest until tomorrow's dreams arrive. Outside, a bell chimes once, the soft lunch is ready kind, not the shogun is visiting kind. The room stirs. But you don't rush. Because even now, as thoughts return to ink and tasks and folded rice cloths, a small part of you lingers in that dream, walking slowly behind a kimono-clad goose, not needing to understand the scroll, just trusting that it mattered. Tomorrow you'll meet the quietest member of the office, the clerk who never speaks but whose naps are so profound they've become office legend. But for now, you rise, smooth your sleeves, and carry your nap and your notebook into the next moment. The afternoon sun has tilted just enough to stretch your shadow across the tatami like a lazy ink stroke. Lunch has been served. A modest tray of rice, pickled plum, and miso soup with a single floating scallion. Balanced, humble, delicious in that quiet, bureaucratic kind of way. You finish your meal without fanfare, no conversation, just the soft sound of chopsticks and the faint slurp of someone trying very hard to sip soup silently. And then, there he is. The silent clerk. You don't know his real name. No one does, or at least no one uses it anymore. He's been here for so long, people joke that he came with the tatami, part of the original floor plan. He sits in the far left corner, always. Never the center, never too close to the sliding door. His desk is smaller than most, yet somehow neater. His calligraphy is flawless. His seals are never crooked. For his lunch tray is always returned without a single grain of rice left behind. And his naps? Legendary. He doesn't nap often. But when he does, the room takes notice. Not with words, of course, but with a collective softening, a hush deeper than usual. Pens pause, breaths slow. Even the bell crickets outside seem to wait respectfully, because when the silent clerk naps, it's like the entire room exhales with him. You glance over now. He's there, seated perfectly upright, hands folded gently over his lap, eyes closed. He doesn't lean, he doesn't curl, he simply drifts, still as a scroll in winter. Breath steady, face calm, no pillow, no cloth, just presence. It's said that once during a particularly chaotic audit season, the silent clerk fell asleep in the middle of the room, and without a word, the office rearranged itself around him. Meetings postponed, reports rescheduled. Brett, someone even placed a small bonsai tree near his side to enhance the harmony. Some believe his dreams contain answers. Others say he doesn't dream at all, that his naps are simply too serene to allow for imagery. One assistant claims to have once peeked at his nap log. It was just one line. No thought, perfect silence. Some historians think he represents the ideal Edo worker, calm, quiet, efficient, and respectful of the collective rhythm. Others think he's simply someone who figured out how to exist in a world full of paper and pressure without letting it stick. Either way, you can't help but watch him now, not out of intrusion, but admiration. It's said that when he wakes, he never blinks. His eyes just open, as if he's never been away, and somehow every time he naps, he seems slightly wiser afterward. Not drastically, not dramatically, just enough to make you wonder if he knows something you don't. You sip the last of your tea and consider your own posture. Could you nap like that? Upright, present, peaceful? You try. Spine straight, hands folded, eyes closed. You last about 8 seconds before your head tips sideways and your knee pops. Not bad, not perfect, but the effort feels meaningful, because the way you nap says something about how you carry yourself in waking life. Do you retreat? Do you lean? Or do you simply exist with softness and purpose, even in sleep? You peek again at the silent clerk, still unmoving, but now, one corner of his mouth has curved ever so slightly upward. Did he smile? Was that for you? Or just the universe? Either way, you feel it, the quiet strength of someone who has made peace with every moment, even the ones spent doing nothing. Tomorrow, you'll visit the tea corner, where naps and matcha intersect in an afternoon ritual so subtle it's practically invisible. But tonight, you close your eyes, sitting upright, and you don't chase dreams, you simply let them arrive. Sections in the room has gone from golden to gentle. Shadows soften, edges as blur. The corners of your vision feel padded like they're wrapped in cotton or folded silk. And somewhere behind you, a single bell chimes, low, slow, deliberate. That's the signal. Tea time. But not just any tea time. This is the afternoon matcha ritual, an unspoken tradition in many Edo period offices. Not required, not regulated, simply observed. You stand slowly, joints sighing, sleeves swaying, and make your way to the tea corner. It's not a room, exactly, just a tucked-away space by the east-facing wall. A short wooden table, A kettle carved from iron, 2 worn tatami mats, and a small scroll that simply reads, "Bitterness is balance." Someone has already begun the prep, probably the assistant clerk with the gentle voice and the uncanny ability to time naps and water temperature with absurd precision. He doesn't speak, just nods. He places the chawan, the tea bowl, in front of you with both hands, and you bow low and slow. It's not ceremony in the formal sense, but there's care here, intention, and more than a little reverence for what's about to happen, because this matcha is for the dreamers. Some historians note that tea in Edo offices wasn't simply for energy, it was for equilibrium, a bitter, frothy green to counterbalance the haze of dreams, not to wake you up harshly, but to guide your mind back to focus like a soft hand on the shoulder. You lift the bowl, it's warm, smells grassy and alive. You take a sip, sharp at first, then round, then quiet, a conversation with someone who knows exactly when not to speak. Around you, others join. The head clerk appears, rested, robe pristine, holding his own bowl like it contains a poem. He takes a seat near the scroll and closes his eyes between sips. Even the junior clerk arrives, still disheveled from his earlier nap, brushing a stray grain of rice from his sleeve. He's handed a bowl by the assistant. No words, just a raised eyebrow that says, "Yes, we're watching, and yes, you're doing fine." Somewhere near the door, the silent clerk sits without a bowl, just present, watching the steam rise. And you feel your breath settle into rhythm with the room. Sip, pause, sip. No urgency, no performance. Just the act of drinking something warm and grounding with others who understand that stillness is collaborative. This isn't just about tea. It's about letting the bitterness bring you back to earth, so that when you return to your desk, to your ink, to your duties, you return whole. Some say the matcha helped clarify the mind. Others say it helped preserve the dreams, catching them gently before they drifted too far like butterflies over a scroll. There are stories of clerks writing entire poems after just one bowl, of love letters rewritten, of ledgers corrected with new insight, of dream logs annotated with lines like, "Post-matcha realization, the koi was probably symbolic of last year's accounting error." You smile, you take your final sip, and bow once more, not just to the tea, but to the pause it allowed. Tomorrow, you'll explore the curious case of nap competitions. Yes, official contests to see who could sleep with the most grace under pressure. But for now, you return to your desk, hands steady, mind calm, and heart just a little more awake. You return to your desk with the quiet dignity of someone who has just shared a wordless cup of matcha and emerged emotionally realigned. The tatami feels slightly cooler under your knees now, not cold, just freshly still. You take your seat slowly. Brush, ink, paper, all waiting. But something stops you, a low chuckle from the far end of the room. A chuckle so rare in this office, it almost feels illegal. Glance over. The junior clerk is red-faced, trying to explain himself to the assistant. Between them, a small square of folded cloth and a wooden tray covered in scoring markers. Ah, you've stumbled upon it. The nap-off. Yes, it's real. And no, it's not just office folklore. Welcome to the Edo period nap competition, a quiet, absurd, entirely unofficial tradition held in back corners of bureaucratic life, where clerks competed not in speed or strength, but in graceful dozing. You watch as the assistant explains the rules, using only 2 fingers and a set of carved tokens shaped like tiny sleeping cats. The criteria? Stillness, no flopping. Breathing rhythm, must be audible but not distracting. Expression, bonus points for faint smiles or dreamlike serenity. Recovery, how elegantly one returns from the nap. It's not written in any manual, no supervisor endorses it, but the staff knows. And once every few weeks, when work is light and the moon is waxing, someone brings out the nap tokens. Today, it's the junior's turn. He kneels beside his desk, straightens his posture, folds his hands over his lap. The room quiets. This is happening. You become one of the judges, a role bestowed by proximity, not by choice. He closes his eyes. His head dips, then steadies. Breath, even. Posture, decent. Expression, not bad, though the brow twitch might cost him. 2 minutes pass. 3. A fly buzzes somewhere near the ink pot, but no one swats it. Too risky. Could disturb the performance. Then gently the junior stirs. He opens one eye, then the other. Straightens his spine. Offers a slow, deliberate bow. Polite, humble, slightly smug. The assistant holds up a small fan, then lowers it halfway, the informal signal for respectable nap, minor deductions. The room releases a collective exhale. You scribble in your notebook, nap off, fourth bell. Junior clerk performed with moderate elegance. Slight nose whistle. Score, 7.3. Sleeping cats out of 10. You return to your work, amused and somehow lighter. Because here, in this world of ink and scrolls, a well-executed nap could earn more admiration than a flawless report. Some historians believe these nap-offs were reflections of Edo Japan's deep appreciation for form and restraint. Others think they were simply a quiet rebellion, a way for office workers to infuse play into structure without ever breaking the rules. But you think it's art, slow, invisible, deeply respectful art. Tomorrow, you'll sit in on a discussion about dream interpretation and promotion letters, because yes, some dreams were deemed so insightful they actually impacted careers. But tonight, you stretch your legs beneath the desk, rest your hand over your notebook, and smile just enough to earn yourself a solid 8.1, if someone's watching. You sit back, letting the memory of the junior clerk's nap performance fade like a ripple in a koi pond. The room has returned to its regular rhythm, brushes scratching, paper rustling, teacups clinking softly. No one speaks of the nap-off. No one needs to. It happened. It was sacred. It's done. But across the room, the head clerk shifts his weight. And you know what that means. It's dream interpretation hour. Well, it's not on the schedule. It's never on the schedule. But in certain Edo period offices, there existed an unwritten rule. When someone shares a dream, the room listens. Not out of curiosity, not out of superstition, but out of respect. Because dreams in this place aren't nonsense. They're messages. And sometimes those messages contain promotions. You shuffle a little closer, notebook in hand. The head clerk clears his throat, which is basically a drum roll, and begins in that calm, papery voice of his. During my rest today, I dreamed I was walking through a forest of ink brushes. Each one bowed as I passed. In the clearing stood a fox, wearing my seal pouch. You could hear the room listening. No scratching, no sipping, no breathing, maybe. Someone nods solemnly. The assistant, ever the scholar, flips to a worn page in the unofficial dream ledger. It's a shared document, usually stored in a lacquer box beneath the main desk. You've peeked before. Its pages are filled with poetic fragments, ink-blotted sketches, and the occasional annotation like interpretation unclear, possibly indigestion. He writes quickly. Forest of ink equals respect from subordinates. Bowing brushes equals good report to come. Fox with seal pouch equals potential for lateral promotion or mysterious errand. Recommendation: assign head clerk to upcoming grain audit. Symbolism suggests preparedness and flexibility. And that's it. No argument, no laughter, just a shared understanding that dreams may carry meaning. And even if they don't, they're a better discussion point than tax math. Some historians believe this practice was deeply influenced by Shinto and Buddhist thought, where the boundary between dream and reality was soft, semi-permeable, where a meaningful nap could carry as much weight as a formal recommendation letter. Others say it was simply a kindness, a way to honor someone's inner world without judgment. A pause to remember that even the most stoic clerk has a subconscious full of foxes and forests. You flip back through your own dream log, rereading yesterday's entry. Goose in kimono, scroll unreadable, felt peaceful. Possible meaning, let go of needing to know. You consider sharing. But not yet. Dreams are like ink, best revealed when fully dried. Outside, wind stirs the bamboo chimes. Inside, the head clerk sips his tea with the air of someone who has just gained symbolic insight and job security in a single nap. Tomorrow, you'll take a walk through the garden nap zone, a sun-dappled courtyard where sleep takes on seasonal flavor, and plum blossoms have been known to fall on dreamers' faces like gentle punctuation. But tonight, you make one small note in your log. Perhaps fox equals self. Perhaps pouch equals purpose. Perhaps nap equals path. You close the book and return to your seat. Not smarter, not busier, just a little more in tune with the dream that might be waiting the next time your eyes drift closed. Paper lanterns have begun to glow, not bright, not showy, just enough to nudge back the early blue of evening. The ink on your latest report has dried, your seal is pressed neatly. You've done your part of the day, but something in the air tugs at you. Soft wind, distant bird song. And that scent again. unmistakable. Plum blossoms. You stand, stretch gently, and follow the breeze past the scroll racks, past the sleeping cat curled beside the window, through a sliding door that opens into a courtyard so still it feels like time set it aside for naps. Welcome to the garden nap zone. It's not marked on any diagram, but every clerk knows it exists. A square of quiet framed by bamboo fences, flat river stones, and a few aging plum trees that have somehow mastered the art of dropping petals just as someone is about to fall asleep. You step onto the warm wood of the Ngawa, the veranda, and look out at the scene. There are 3 clerks already here. One reclines beneath the central plum tree, arms folded beneath his head, snoring in haiku rhythm. Another leans back against the stone lantern, eyes closed, hands still gently cupped around a rice cracker. And the third, the assistant, is sitting upright in Caesar, clearly pretending to meditate, but 100% asleep. You bow, step down onto the soft moss path, and find your usual spot, beside the koi pond, the off near the sun-warmed stone that holds just enough heat to act as a natural pillow. You lower yourself slowly, carefully, respectfully, and lie back. The sky is soft blue. A few clouds drift past like they're on a break from cloud duties. A plum blossom lands silently on your shoulder. You don't move it, because here, in the garden nap zone, nature assists. Some say the original architects of Edo offices included these courtyards intentionally, not for appearances, but for staff wellness. Others argue they were merely aesthetic spaces that clerks colonized for rest the same way cats colonize cardboard boxes. Either way, it works. The warmth of the stones seeps into your back. The breeze cools your face. A plum blossom falls on your cheek, and for a moment you imagine it's pressing a blessing into your skin. You close your eyes, not tightly, just enough, and the nap begins. Not deep, not long, just enough to taste the stillness. Some nap logs refer to these courtyard dozes as sun sleeps. Naps powered by solar agreement, others call them petal pauses. There's even a rumor that one clerk had a dream so vivid here, involving a goose, of course, that his dream log entry had to be written on 2 scrolls. You drift, and in your half-sleep, you feel the soft pressure of the world asking nothing of you, the quietness of moss under your fingertips, the full permission to just be. No tax forms, no ink mistakes, no haunted abacuses, just your breath, the breeze, the nap. Tomorrow you'll return to the main hall where someone will bring out a record of official nap citations, minor infractions and heroic saves, including the time someone rescued a supervisor mid-snore from face-planting into a jar of pickled daikon. But tonight, stay in the garden, let the plum blossoms fall, let the stone warm your spine, and let the quiet hold you like you've always belonged here, because you do. The light filters through your eyelids in shades of apricot and rose, soft, end-of-day colors that even the sky seems too tired to hold for long. You inhale slowly. The scent of warm moss, faint plum, and a trace of old ink lingers in the air, like the last line of a poem you almost remember. You sit up gently, brushing a petal from your sleeve. Someone has set a tiny saucer beside you, 2 salted rice crackers and a sliver of pickled radish, folded neatly in waxed paper. A snack for waking, a gesture of care. You bow toward the veranda, though no one is in sight. Welcome back. As you rise and make your way inside, your path takes you past a scroll cabinet, and there it is, the record of nap citations. Bound in indigo cloth, corners slightly frayed, it rests atop the administrative shelf like a quiet dare. You pause. Open it. The first few pages are filled with neat script and unexpected hilarity. Clerk Iwamoto fell asleep on open ledger, ink transferred, claimed it improved legibility, partial credit awarded. Scribe Natsume snored in perfect 575 syllables, logged as accidental haiku. Assistant Rin intercepted supervisor's fall mid-dream, earned commendation and second pick of plum snacks. Unauthorized use of communal fox pillow, citation issued, apology accepted with rice ball. This is the other side of nap culture. Not the graceful stillness, not the tea-scented reflection, but the small, sleepy disasters that make it all feel human and utterly endearing. Some of the citations are in jest, others are written with surprisingly poetic sympathy. Fell asleep during census copy duty, dreamed of swimming lanterns, no punishment, promoted for creativity. You reach the end of the current page and find a blank line waiting, and a pen. Someone has left it open for you. You think about your courtyard nap, the warmth of the stone, the plum on your cheek, the feeling of being allowed to disappear without consequence. You write, afternoon nap beneath plum, no infractions, possible enlightenment. Then you close the book gently, tuck the pen into its cloth loop, and move on with a softness in your step. Because in this place, even your missteps are logged like poetry. Some historians believe the nap citation tradition was a subtle way to maintain order with kindness, to gently correct without shame, and to honor the vulnerability of rest. Others think it was a long-running joke among clerks who'd seen too many people fall asleep into inkwells. Either way, it speaks to the soul of the office. Here, even mistakes wear slippers. Tomorrow, you'll gather in the archive room where stories are told of clerks who dreamed the future, whose naps became legends, whose sleep inspired actual policy edits. But tonight, you return to your desk, a little lighter, a little more amused, and a lot more convinced that the best workplaces aren't just about efficiency or silence, but about a shared understanding that sometimes the most meaningful thing you can do is nap, with grace, and maybe a little drool. By now it feels like it's exhaling. The scrolls have been rolled, the brushes rinsed, inkstones cleaned and placed just so, their surfaces dark and glossy like still ponds at twilight. Lanterns glow softly on the walls, casting long shadows that dance with the rhythm of slow footsteps and lingering sighs. You sit at your desk once more, not to work, but to reflect. It's the quietest hour of the day, the space between end and after. The time when nothing is asked of you and even your thoughts start speaking in whispers. Across the room, the silent clerk stands, a rare movement. He bows gently toward the others, no words, just presence, and steps out into the hallway, disappearing like fog over a koi pond. One by one, the other clerks follow. Not rushed, not delayed, just timed. You remain behind a moment longer. There's a thin breeze winding through the bamboo slats now, brushing against the scrolls on the wall. One flutters softly. You look up. It's the one with the old proverb written in faded ink. A nap taken together is a promise of peace. You nod, as if it heard you. And maybe it did. You gather your things, your dream log, your brush wrap, a few pages of notes you may never turn in, and tuck them into your cloth satchel. Everything done slowly, because here, slowness is a kind of wisdom. Before leaving, you walk once more past the nap citation scroll. You hesitate. Then, with a flick of the brush, you add a tiny symbol in the margin of your last entry, a sleeping plum blossom. You don't know why, but it feels right. The hallway outside is dim and warm, lit by oil lamps that smell faintly of orange peel and cedar. You pass the garden one last time. No one's there now, just the soft sound of water trickling and a breeze shaking down a few final blossoms. You pause. Let your hand rest on the doorframe. And for a moment, the day wraps itself around you like a blanket freshly folded, still holding the shape of what it protected. Tomorrow there will be more scrolls, more silence, more naps, perhaps even a new dream to log. But tonight, you walk home slowly. The weight of your satchel is balanced by the weightlessness in your chest. And as you slip off your shoes, wash your hands in a shallow bowl and lie down on your futon beneath the moonlit paper screen. You realize this day wasn't about ink or ledgers or even naps. It was about being allowed to live gently, and maybe, just maybe, letting the world slow down with you. So now, close your eyes, breathe in, soft, slow, and let yourself drift. You've earned this rest. No citations tonight, just stillness and sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams. The light now is pale and polished, like the soft edge of a pearl. It's midday, but everything has slowed, not with exhaustion, but with anticipation. You feel it in the way the clerks have stilled their brushes, in the way tea is poured more quietly, in the way not a single scroll has been unrolled in the last 10 minutes. Because it's almost time for what might be the most revered, most delicate, and possibly most absurdly specific break in all of Edo period bureaucracy. The Emperor's Quiet Hour. And yes, it's real. You're not in the Imperial Palace, of course, but even here, in a modest provincial office, the rhythm of daily rest is calibrated by hierarchy, by tradition, and, as rumor insists, by the breathing patterns of the national scholar himself, the Kotoshikan, or imperial tutor. Let me explain. Every afternoon, sometime around the 6th hour of the day, just past noon by today's reckoning, the imperial court observed a formal resting interval. But it wasn't signaled by a bell or a clock. No, it was timed by a monk-turned-philosopher-turned-human meditation device who sat near the emperor's study, eyes closed, breathing in an exact, repeatable rhythm. 12 slow breaths, a pause, 12 more. Only when the 4th cycle began would a court attendant strike a jade bell, the signal that the emperor had begun his rest, and the entire palace and dozens of satellite offices across Japan were expected to match pace. And yes, your office included. Some thought it was poetic, others mildly unhinged, but everyone complied. Not just out of duty, but out of something stranger, quieter, more collective. Honor by osmosis. You look around now, everyone's ready. The inkstones have been covered, fans stilled. A paper screen has been drawn down over the front entrance to muffle sound. A note is pinned delicately to the screen's center. Emperor is at breath. Do not disturb the stillness. You lower yourself to your mat, no pillow this time, just sleeve, just air, just breath, in, out, 12 times. You're not timing yourself, but somehow your body knows. Everyone's does. It's said that a well-trained scribe could sync so perfectly to the rhythm of the emperor's nap that he could fall asleep on the final breath and wake the moment the jade bell rang again, without ever opening his eyes in between. You're not quite there, but close. The breeze shifts. A crow calls once, then stops, almost embarrassed. Even the cat under the stairwell has flattened itself into perfect nap posture, one eye open, just in case of snacks, but otherwise, still. And in this exquisite, breath-counted pause, you remember something you once heard whispered in the archive room. When the emperor sleeps, the country exhales. Some historians suggest this entire ritual may have been exaggerated, an Edo myth built on fragments of court practice. But does it matter? The stillness is real. The breath is real. And the feeling that you're connected, not just to your coworkers, but to a nation of dreamers bound together by timing and trust, that is very real. Tomorrow, you'll take part in a practice known as tea dreaming, a 2 p.m. ritual where matcha and micronaps intertwine like steam and breath. But tonight, you rest on the 12th breath, and somewhere, perhaps in a palace or perhaps only in the heart of this quiet, an emperor dreams with you. The bell doesn't ring this time. It's a low, soft chime that rolls through the room like steam escaping a teacup, quiet, fragrant, and oddly persuasive. The room responds without speaking. Scrolls are closed, brushes wiped clean, and almost as if choreographed, a small group of clerks rises and begins to move toward the tea alcove. You follow them, because today is 2 p.m., and that means one thing: tea and dreaming, also known in whispers and nap logs as chamu, or tea dreaming. This is no ordinary tea break. It's not about conversation, not even about caffeine. It's about the careful combination of two of the most sacred things in Edo office culture, the silence of tea, the ritual of napping. You arrive at the tatami-lined alcove, a shaded room tucked behind a screen of woven bamboo. The light is filtered, the floor cool, and the air rich with the earthy scent of matcha. Laid out before you, 7 bowls, not numbered, not named, just waiting. The assistant clerk, now moonlighting as a tea host, begins to whisk. No one speaks. No one dares, because this isn't tea for tasting. This is tea for falling asleep. One by one, bowls are served. You receive yours with both hands. Breathe in, sip, and feel it happen. The warmth travels from your chest to your temples to your fingertips. The bitterness sharpens your edges, just briefly, before dissolving into an unexpected softness, a pre-nap clarity. Like the inside of your mind has been tidied up by a very polite monk. You place the bowl down and lie back. There are no pillows here, just the folded sleeves of your robe and the collective stillness of 6 other people entering that liminal space between awareness and rest. In Edo-era archives, this practice is occasionally mentioned in poetic fragments. To sleep on tea is to dream with focus. Matcha stirs the door open. Napping walks through. Some historians debate whether chamu was widespread or limited to specific scholarly circles. Others argue it was too subtle to ever make formal records, existing in the realm of office tradition, passed hand to hand like an inside joke that's too sacred to explain. But here it's everything. You let your eyes close, your breath slows, and you begin to dream. Not of work, not of scrolls, but of ripples in a teacup growing wider and wider until they become footsteps on a riverbank. You walk without walking, you see without seeing. A heron turns to look at you and says in perfect calligraphy, "Go back. The water's warm." You do. And when you open your eyes again, you're not startled. You're not groggy. You're just rested. Someone strikes a bamboo chime. No applause. No congratulations. Just one note added to the log beside the mat. 2 p.m. 5 dreamers. 2 sighs. No spills. 1 heron. Tomorrow, you'll meet a clerk who's never been able to nap, and the strange, quiet art of insomniac ink therapy he's invented to cope. But tonight, you leave the tea alcove with your limbs loose, your mind clean, and your breath still laced with bitterness. And you think, if all meetings ended like this, maybe the world wouldn't need coffee at all. Not everyone naps. Strange, but true. Even in this soft-sleeved world of scrolls and sighs where every breath seems tuned for rest, there are outliers. Individuals whose minds remain stubbornly awake, pacing inside their heads like restless cats. And today, you meet one. He sits at a corner desk, slightly apart from the others, sleeves rolled just enough to reveal forearms marked with faint specks of ink. Not from carelessness, but from effort. Concentrated, continuous effort. His name? You're not sure. They just call him the insomniac samurai clerk, which sounds dramatic until you see him in action. Everyone else begins their afternoon nap cycle. Pillows shift, breaths deepen. One person is already dreaming of a fox playing a shamisen, probably. But the samurai clerk, he does not lie down. He draws. Not art, exactly, but patterns. Slow, hypnotic brushstrokes that repeat and ripple across thin paper in a language known only to him. A dot, a curved line, a swirl, repeat. Some call it ink therapy. Others think it's a code. He calls it nothing because he doesn't speak. Not while working, not while drawing, and definitely not while everyone else is asleep. He dips his brush with care, using a dark tea-based pigment rather than ink. Less staining, more forgiving. His papers are stacked neatly, weighed down by a smooth river stone engraved with the word ki, energy. You settle beside him for a moment, curious but respectful. He doesn't acknowledge you, but he doesn't mind you either. You mimic his rhythm. Brush up, brush down, hold, breathe. There's peace in it, the kind that doesn't require sleep. It's said that samurai assigned to clerical duties, often retired or too injured for patrol, carried their discipline into paperwork. But some, like this one, couldn't fully surrender to stillness. Their bodies remembered too much. So instead of napping, they turned to structured silence. Calligraphy loops, repetitive motion, breath-counting ink lines. There's even a story that one samurai clerk cured his sleeplessness by tracing the names of cherry trees every day for 3 years. And on the final day, he slept through a thunderstorm, undisturbed. The clerk beside you sets down his brush. He rubs the inside of his heel with his thumb. A slow, practiced motion like pressing a secret button. You've heard of this before, foot acupressure. A favored technique of Edo insomniacs. Supposedly, it stimulates the flow of calming energy from heel to temple. You try it. Your foot says, interesting. Maybe. He looks at your attempt and, for the first time, nods. Not approval, not instruction, just shared recognition. Tomorrow, you'll sit in for the ringing of the dream bell and learn how the office gently coerces imagination through sound. But tonight, you return to your desk with a single sheet of your own patterned marks. Not quite art, not quite message, but real. And when you sleep, eventually, you do so not because the office told you to, but because your body finally felt drawn there. The first chime is so soft you think it might be in your head. A high, delicate note, not sharp, not showy, just enough to raise a few eyebrows and lower a few eyelids. A moment later, it rings again, then once more at a slightly slower pace. Dong, dong, dong. You know this rhythm, everyone does. It's time for the dream bell. In many Edo period offices, this afternoon ritual was designed not just to allow napping, but to gently encourage it. To remind anyone still anxiously brushing through rice reports or scribbling footnotes that it's perfectly acceptable, even expected, to let go. The bell itself sits at the center of the main hall, suspended from a curved wooden frame. It's about the size of a rice bowl, cast in bronze, etched with kanji that roughly translate to, "When the mind refuses, let the dream begin." It's rung 3 times every day, once at mid-afternoon to begin rest, once shortly after to check who's still resisting, and once more for those who need a little push. Today, as the second chime fades, you notice a few clerks hesitating. The assistant is still adjusting the ink chart for tomorrow. The junior clerk is pretending to organize brushes, but he's really just procrastinating. Even the insomniac samurai, still tracing slow ink loops in the corner, glances toward the bell with a faint flicker of interest. And then it happens. But not from the same bell. A second, smaller bell with a slightly different tone rings from the doorway. Its message is clear. If you haven't dreamed yet, please do so now. And that's not a suggestion. That's a communal nudge. You smile to yourself as the assistant finally puts down his ink stick and lies back, muttering, "Fine, just 10 minutes." The junior clerk folds himself into a corner with such exaggerated drama, you'd think he was rehearsing for a kabuki role titled Sleepy Bureaucrat No. 2. Even the samurai stops drawing. That's rare. He leans back, closes his eyes, and lets one hand rest palm up on the paper. You lower yourself, too, into the familiar fold of your robe, the cool touch of tatami, the soft echo of bells still shimmering in the air like the aftertaste of sound. And then the dreams arrive. Not dramatic ones, not dragons or duels or declarations, just soft impressions. A room made of paper, a fish sleeping in a pond without ripples, a phrase whispered once, then forgotten. You'll remember what matters. Later, you'll jot that line down in your nap log and underline it twice. Some historians believe the dream bell was tied to Buddhist practices, a way to blur the line between waking and meditation, to enter a lucid rest with intention. Others argue it was simply a brilliant way to maintain office harmony, prevent burnout, and avoid tea-related tantrums at 3 p.m. Either way, it works. Tomorrow, you'll explore the peculiar design of lacquered nap desks, a line of furniture created specifically to support the elegant collapse of the human forehead mid-scroll. But tonight, let the bells echo. Let your breath follow their fading song. And if you haven't dreamed yet, don't worry. You're about to. Your forehead makes contact with the desk in the most elegant, quiet, and completely accidental way possible. No thud. No jolt. Just a gentle surrender. The kind that happens when the body decides it knows better than the mind. You're awake one moment, reading the second line of a grain ledger for the third time, and the next, your face has found lacquer. And honestly, you've never felt more supported, because this isn't just any desk. This is a lacquered nap desk, one of the unsung marvels of Edo period office design. A structure built not only for writing, not only for reviewing documents, but for the deeply honorable task of napping without shame. You shift slightly, cheek resting on the smooth surface. The lacquer is cool and faintly fragrant, a whisper of camphor, old wood, and just a trace of ceremonial incense absorbed from decades of nearby scrolls. You're not alone. All around the room, similar moments unfold. A clerk leans forward slowly, arms crossed beneath his brow, achieving nap desk contact with the grace of a falling leaf. A supervisor pretends to be rereading a report, but his head has stopped moving and his quill has slipped gently onto the page. Even the junior assistant has embraced the forehead, snoring faintly into a list of fertilizer shipments. You glance sideways at your own desk and notice for the first time the tiny details carved beneath the lip. A single phrase, "This surface forgives." Indeed, it does. These desks weren't like the heavy tables of Europe or the floor cushions of the tea house. No, lacquered nap desks were uniquely Edo. Low to the ground, slightly curved along the front edge, and finished in a gleaming resin that made resting your head not only easy, but inevitable. Some were even customized. One clerk reportedly had a desk inset with a thin pad of cloth hidden beneath a flap, like a secret pillow drawer. Another boasted a fold-out armrest, specifically for left-side nappers. There were debates, of course, forehead down or temple to the edge, crossed arms or single-hand support, desk with slope or perfectly flat. In the end, everyone agreed. Whatever helps you drift without drooling on official records is the right choice. Some historians suggest these nap-friendly designs were an extension of the Japanese philosophy of ma, the space between things, the pause, the breath. A desk that didn't resist your exhaustion but welcomed it was an object built with compassion. Press your cheek into the surface just a little more and sigh. This isn't a fall asleep at your keyboard kind of moment. This is structured surrender. It tells your coworkers, I've worked well, I've worked long, now I rest attractively. Tomorrow you'll open a scroll labeled Reports Containing Dreams and learn about the curious practice of filing subconscious visions alongside actual rice shipment data. But tonight, let your body fold. Let the lacquer hold you. And remember, the best desks don't just carry your work, they carry you too. The room is dim again, not from lack of light, but from the gentle curtain of calm that seems to fall every afternoon around this hour. The scrolls are still, the brushes quiet. Even the air has taken on that slower quality, like it's whispering, shh, the paperwork can wait. You sit upright now, refreshed from your brief but perfectly supported nap. The lacquer from your desk left the faintest impression on your sleeve, and you wear it like a badge of honor. Just across the room, someone begins unrolling a scroll, but not just any scroll. It's a dream report. That's right, filed with the same care and reverence as official correspondence, tax ledgers, and warehouse inventories. These scrolls contain dreams, not idle doodles, not half-remembered nonsense, but carefully transcribed visions experienced during naps, particularly those deemed meaningful, symbolic, or, in at least one case, prophetically useful. You shift closer. The scroll's header is elegantly written. Subject, grain delivery from Northern Province, dream addendum. The first half is standard. Numbers, dates, seals. But beneath the final rice tally is a small indented section marked with a single character. Mum, dream. And the text reads, during afternoon rest, envisioned a large white crane flying over the granary, then bowing. Upon waking, requested an inspection. 2 sacks found punctured by mouse teeth prevented spoilage. You blink. That dream saved 8 barrels of rice. Another clerk opens a second scroll, this one from a temple clerk near Mount Yoshino. Dreamed I stood ankle-deep in spilled ink. A storm began, but only inside the room. Woke uneasy. Upon checking, found leak in ceiling. Saved archive scrolls before rain entered. It's no joke. Some offices maintained full dream registers, cataloged with dates, dreamer names, and whether action was taken. Entries were sometimes marked with a tiny stamp. A red circle if the dream had practical value, a green one if it simply boosted morale. Occasionally, a dream might even be officially integrated into a report, especially if it supported a decision that lacked other justification. Some managers were known to add a line like, dream of fox bowing beneath lantern confirms change in merchant policy. Because honestly, who's going to argue with a dream fox? Some historians believe this dream recording practice was part symbolic, part strategic. It allowed offices to blend intuition with administration, a kind of soft diplomacy between logic and spirit. Others suggest it was simply a way to honor the subconscious efforts of clerks who were otherwise confined to ink and numbers. A nap wasn't just recovery, it was research. You glance at your own scroll drawer. There's a blank sheet calling to you. You reach for your brush and write, nap dream. A paper crane unfolded itself and became a bridge, unsure of meaning, filing under, pending. You fold the scroll gently, tie it with a simple cord, and place it behind your ledger. Not urgent, not forgotten, just waiting. Tomorrow you'll witness a moment of collective oversleep when supervisors snore together, delaying a meeting and reshaping the rhythm of an entire day. But tonight, you leave your dream safely tucked between rice counts and meeting notes, because in this office, even sleep is part of the record, and your dreams matter. You hear it before you see it. A low, rolling harmony, not from instruments, not from bells, but from 3 supervisors snoring in near-perfect unison. You glance toward the central mat space where senior clerks sometimes gather for joint deliberation, a phrase often whispered with air quotes. Today there is no deliberation, only dreaming. One reclines on his side, head resting on a cushion embroidered with the character for stillness. Another is flat on his back, arms crossed like a contented monk. The third has draped a sleeve across his eyes in dramatic fashion, a technique widely recognized as the I'm listening with my spirit pose. And they are asleep, deeply, unapologetically. This is not an accident. This is a known event. You've stumbled upon a legendary occurrence whispered about in dream logs and lunch corners, supervisors who snore together. The story goes that once every few months, The three senior-most officials of the office, through some unspoken pact or collective fatigue, fall asleep at exactly the same time in the same room without planning it. It throws the entire building into a kind of bureaucratic limbo. Because no one, not even the bravest tea assistant, dares to wake them. You hear hushed voices near the hallway. Should we proceed with the requisition forms? Without a stamp? Are you insane? Even the cat pauses mid-grooming. Meetings are postponed. Scrolls remain unsigned. One junior clerk, halfway through a proposal, simply bows to the empty mat and places his report beside a sleeping sandal. Instead of chaos, there's quiet acceptance. It becomes a kind of impromptu festival. The great nap delay, a rare window where no one is being watched, judged, or asked to make decisions. One assistant sneaks in a sketch of the trio, their poses carefully labeled: the crescent moon, sleeping mountain, fog over teacup. The drawing is later filed in the cultural events folder. Some say this synchronized slumber is a sign of divine office harmony, that the building itself has decided to pause and recalibrate. Others say it's just the result of an unusually heavy lunch and excellent tatami. Either way, no one complains. You use the time to organize your scrolls, re-ink your brush, add a note to your dream log. No dreams today. But silence from above is its own kind of vision. Eventually, one of the supervisors stirs. The sleeve slips from his eyes. He yawns, sits up. The other two follow, blinking slowly, unaware of the power vacuum their naps created. No one says a word. They rise, straighten their robes, and quietly resume their positions, as if nothing happened. Someone gently rings the back-to-business bell. A collective inhale. Work resumes. But for the rest of the day, everything feels softer, because now you know. Even the highest-ranking scroll stampers are human, and sometimes they nap too long, and everything survives. Tomorrow, you'll explore the deeper philosophy behind all of this. How, in Edo office culture, sleep wasn't avoidance, it was trust. But tonight, you file your work away, bow toward the central mat, and walk home smiling, because you've just witnessed an office miracle, and no one got in trouble. The sun is low now, brushing the tips of the temple roofs with amber light, and yet no one rushes. The office, freshly stirred from its three-supervisor nap hiatus, has returned to a rhythm so gentle it barely counts as motion. You unroll a clean sheet of paper, not to work, but to write down what you've been thinking for some time now. Napping isn't the opposite of effort. It is the effort. That's the philosophy whispered between brushstrokes and teacups, hinted at in haiku margins, woven into the weave of every tatami mat. And today, for the first time, it truly lands in your bones. This is napping as work ethic, a concept so utterly strange to modern minds, yet so natural here it feels like gravity. Here's what you've learned. If you nap openly in an Edo period office, not out of exhaustion, not out of boredom, but with stillness, respect, and full surrender, it says something. It says, I trust my coworkers. It says, I'm confident in my process. It says, my mind is clear enough to pause, not panic. You think of the silent clerk, of the garden naps, of the dream logs, the lacquered desks, the bells, and it all leads to this, stillness as proof of competence. Because here, no one is praised for frantic scribbling, no one brags about staying late, productivity isn't a badge of honor. Clarity is, and clarity often sleeps for a bit before it speaks. There's even a phrase you've heard whispered now and then, the clerk who naps without shame forgets nothing. Some attribute it to a famous magistrate. Others claim it's just something the assistant wrote on a dare. Either way, it lives rent-free in your head now. You glance around the room. Everyone is back at work, slowly, gently. One scribe hums faintly while organizing receipts. Another sharpens his brush, pausing now and then to smell the cedar handle. And in their movements, you see it. Not laziness, not disengagement, but calm mastery. They've worked this rhythm for years. Work, pause, focus, dream, write, nap, repeat. Tomorrow you'll unroll a scroll that records one of the strangest edicts in office history, a shogunate-sanctioned siesta mandate complete with official seals. But tonight, you rest your brush, fold your notes, and walk home at the same speed you work, slow, intentional, and proud of the nap you took. Because here in Edo, closing your eyes might just mean you finally opened your mind. The scroll is real. You weren't sure it would be Honestly, it sounded like one of those exaggerated tales passed down during tea breaks, like the one about the clerk who dreamed he was a koi fish and refused to speak for a week. But this is different. Because in your hands lies an official shogunate directive, sealed with red lacquer, edges slightly curled from time and reverence. It reads, to preserve mental clarity, sustain harmony among clerks, and prevent overthinking in matters of taxation, the midday rest is henceforth encouraged in all provincial offices under Tokugawa authority. Let nap time be observed, not questioned. You blink. There's even an official nap stamp. A circular seal featuring a sleeping turtle surrounded by plum blossoms. Not satire, not metaphor, just policy. This is the shogunate's silent siesta. You lay the scroll gently on your desk as the assistant clerk approaches, eyes glinting with the specific kind of pride reserved for people who collect footnotes in imperial policy. Yes, he whispers, it was enacted during the reign of Tokugawa Ieyatsuna. Post-famine, morale was low, productivity sagged. Someone, we think a scribe in the Ministry of Salt, proposed it during a particularly boring grain census meeting. He adjusts his sleeves. Turns out, if you let everyone sleep after rice counts, they make 40% fewer mistakes in the afternoon. You nod slowly. The numbers make sense, but more than that, the feeling makes sense. Because in a culture so steeped in order, timing, and balance, mandating rest isn't softness, it's strategy. You flip the scroll to its second page. Here you find addendums. Suggested nap duration, 3 breaths of incense. Optional music, 1-string shamisen. Prohibited during earthquakes, audits, or if the emperor is mid-sentence. Suggested positions, left side, arms folded, spine soft. Encouraged accessories, dream log, fan, light scent of hinoki, if available. One line near the bottom stands out. Those who nap together maintain better records. It's hard to argue with logic that poetic. You remember the synchronized snoozing of the 3 supervisors, the nap log beside the lacquer desk, the quiet warmth of the garden moss. You realize this scroll didn't start a tradition. It recognized one that already existed. Some historians say the edict wasn't about sleep at all, that it was a covert way to encourage emotional regulation in the civil ranks. Others believe it was simply damage control after a series of clerical errors caused by exhaustion and overconsumption of pickled radish. Whatever the reason, it worked. Offices calmed, work improved. And the nap became not just a personal act, but a civic duty. Tomorrow you'll read about the time a nap became political scandal and how a provincial official's dream during a religious ceremony was cited in court as divine insight. But tonight you roll the scroll back up reverently, place it on the shelf beside the ink inventory, and let yourself feel something rare in the world of paperwork and procedure. Permission. To pause. To breathe. To rest. Because once upon a time, the most powerful government in the land looked at a room full of tired clerks and said, you know what, just lie down for a bit. The ink was barely dry on the official temple records when the scandal began. It started with a nap, or to be precise, a nap during a sacred ritual taken by none other than Magistrate Ishikawa, the provincial official in charge of grain oversight, shrine funding, and a surprising number of koi pond regulations. This was not, shall we say, a low-ranking snoozer. The setting? A solemn new moon ceremony held at the region's oldest shrine. Dozens of attendees, monks chanting, incense rising like soft smoke signals to the gods, and in the front row, Magistrate Ishikawa, asleep. Not subtly, not politely. He had nodded off so fully, so openly, that one of the monks paused mid-chant to confirm he was still breathing. He was, and snoring rhythmically in a 575 meter, naturally. What happened next? That's where the scrolls get interesting, because when Ishikawa awoke, he didn't deny it. He reported the dream, in full detail, with confidence. He claimed that in his vision, a fox wearing imperial robes handed him a bag of rice and whispered, "Adjust the village tax. A storm is coming. Sleep is clarity." He filed this dream in his official log, stamped it, and within 48 hours, lowered the regional grain levy by 3%. People were confused, concerned, amused. Then, it rained, heavily. Wheat shipments were delayed. But because of the lower levy, no penalties were issued. No riots happened. No warehouses collapsed under the weight of angry scribes. And just like that, the sleeping fox dream became legend. Some praised Ishikawa as a visionary. Others accused him of exploiting nap culture for political power. A few claimed he'd simply eaten too much pickled yam at lunch. But one thing was certain: sleeping had entered the political arena. For weeks, the case was debated in council meetings. Could dreams be used to justify decisions? Should naps during ceremonies be fined? Was the fox an omen or a metaphor? Eventually, a compromise was reached. A new clause was quietly added to the regional code. If, during official function, a civil servant should experience dream of divine or strategic value, said content may be recorded as advisory insight pending review. It was nicknamed the Fox Exception. You can still see the clause today etched in the margins of dusty temple records next to a tiny ink drawing of a very smug fox. You close the scroll and lean back, processing everything. Tomorrow, you'll study the bizarre internal promotion system that once judged clerks by how serenely they could sleep under pressure. A performance review in dreams. But tonight, you let the lessons sink in. Sometimes power wears silk robes. Sometimes it carries a seal. And sometimes it naps right in the middle of a shrine and dreams of rice and storms and knowing exactly when to let go. The ink is barely dried on the scandal scroll when the next story finds its way into your hands, passed to you by the assistant with a sly grin and the whisper, "Performance reviews? Try performance snoozes." You unroll the parchment, curious. At the top, a stamped title in bold, brush-perfect kanji, "Snooze or Lose, Promotions Based on Rest Performance." You blink. This wasn't satire. This was HR policy, Edo style. Welcome to one of the most surreal, most wonderfully bureaucratic traditions of the era. Sleep-based promotion evaluations. Yes, at the peak of Edo office culture in a few particularly progressive provincial bureaus, there was an experimental system where clerks could demonstrate their emotional resilience, mental clarity, and spiritual readiness through something called a restfulness trial. In short, you napped, they judged, you got promoted. The test wasn't simple. You were summoned to the evaluation chamber, really just the nicest room in the building, with extra soft tatami and a borrowed incense pot from the local monastery. You were handed a scroll and asked to read a deeply boring, intentionally repetitive passage. Think, a detailed account of window frame maintenance procedures in rural warehouses. Then you were told, now, sleep. Judges, usually senior clerks and one dream archivist, would quietly observe. No talking, no poking, no wind chimes. The criteria? Time to sleep ratio. How quickly could you surrender? Serenity during slumber. Eyebrow tension was a known red flag. Breathing rhythm. Bonus if you matched the incense curls. Exit elegance. Waking smoothly, no startles, no drool. If your nap showed signs of inner peace, trust in structure, and non-clingy brain activity, promotion granted. If you tossed, mumbled, or flinched at imaginary paper deadlines, back to ink copy duty. You scan the scroll for examples. Clerk Harada slept within 3 incense rings, smiled faintly, and woke just as a crane outside landed, promoted to ledger supervisor. Clerk Mio failed to enter sleep phase, citing anxiety about charcoal supplies, promotion postponed pending tea therapy. Clerk Takeda drooled onto annual budget scroll. While unfortunate, judges noted commendable depth of surrender. Given honorary role in stationery procurement. You can't help but smile, because in this world, sleep isn't a side act. It's a mirror, reflecting how well you trust your environment, your work, your team. And let's be honest, anyone who can drift off in a room full of bureaucrats watching them sleep probably has nerves of steel and a soul made of steamed rice. You jot a note in your log. Would pass serenity trial. Might drool. Must practice graceful waking. Tomorrow, you'll unravel the quiet resistance to all this rest. A tale of anti-coffee protests and the strange arrival of caffeine-fueled rebellion in a sleepy, orderly world. But tonight, you rest with confidence, because now you know. Sometimes, climbing the ladder doesn't require pushing harder. It just takes closing your eyes and trusting you're already enough. The scroll is thinner than most, folded oddly, smells faintly of foreign spices and tension. You open it carefully and see the title inked in a firmer, sharper style than usual, The Anti-Coffee Movement of Edo, a Gentle Rebellion. You blink. Coffee. It arrived late, not with a bang, but with a brew. Carried into the harbors on Dutch ships along with magnifying glasses, medical texts, and rumors of powdered wigs. At first, it was a novelty, a dark, bitter drink served at curious taverns and to curious people. But then, it made its way to the clerks. And that's when things got complicated. Because in a world built on balance, stillness, and ink that flows as slowly as thought, coffee was chaos in a cup. It sped things up, made people jittery. Some scribes began copying too quickly, forgetting commas, or, heaven forbid, switching honorifics mid-scroll. One poor clerk was found red-eyed at midnight, still writing, surrounded by 10 half-filled ledgers and an untouched rice ball. And thus, the resistance began. A quiet movement of tea drinkers, nap loggers, and scroll-minded purists who believed that rest, not stimulation, was the true path to clarity. They weren't loud. They were worse. Deeply polite. Instead of protesting, they held longer naps. Instead of slogans, they composed haiku. Instead of banning coffee outright, they labeled it a seasonal stimulant not aligned with office temperament. Some offices issued subtle signs. Please enjoy your dreams undiluted. Ink flows best when minds are steeped, not stirred. Those wishing to discuss foreign beans may do so after third bell. There are records of reverse coffee ceremonies, where participants would bring cups of coffee to the garden, bow to them respectfully, and then bury them under the plum tree. One such ceremony was even attended by a visiting Dutch merchant who reportedly nodded in solemn approval before quietly sneaking off to drink his cup behind the tool shed. Was coffee banned? No, but it was outnapped. Some historians argue that this resistance was about more than caffeine. It was a subtle stand for internal rhythm in a world beginning to spin faster. A defense of the slow, the steady, the still. You sit back, imagining the scene. A room full of drowsy clerks breathing deeply while one overly alert colleague fidgets in the corner, trying not to spill his imported beverage onto the dream log. You smile. Tomorrow, you'll approach the final stages of the nap tradition, the decline, the transformation, and how these rhythms echo in today's culture. But tonight, you set down your cup of roasted tea, bow slightly to it, and write in your log, resisted the bean, chose dreams over awakening, no regrets, only stillness. Because here in this sacred hall of slow breaths and resting brows, sleep is not what you escape, it's what you return to. The sun now hangs low, like a paper lantern at the end of a long festival. Its light slips through bamboo screens and lands in long, sleepy stripes across your desk. The air is quieter today, not just because it's late, but because something in the room has shifted. Not in a bad way, but in the way of things that are about to end. This is the story of the decline of the sleep office. It didn't happen all at once. No decree was issued. No bell was silenced. But slowly the rhythm began to change. A new clerk arrived, fresh from a port city, carrying a satchel made of foreign cloth and an hourglass tied to his obi. He tapped his brush faster than anyone else. His ink dried before it cooled. He drank coffee. He timed his naps. Worse, he called them breaks. You remember the first day someone used that word, break. It felt sharp, cold, like a crack in lacquer. Because in this place, rest had never been a pause. It had been a part, an integral movement in the symphony of the day, not what happened between work, but what allowed work to matter. But times were changing. More trade, more clocks, more pressure to produce, count, measure, prove. Supervisors still napped, of course. Some habits never die. But they did it with one eye open, with a ledger half unrolled, with a breath that said, I'm available if the shogun sends a fax. Dream logs became less poetic, more perfunctory. No dream, slept 10 minutes, returned to drafting scroll 483. One assistant removed the bell from the garden wall, said it was collecting dust. Someone else replaced the tatami mats near the nap corner with firmer, less forgiving boards, easier to clean, they said. The lacquered nap desks stayed for a while, but people began using them differently. Less for leaning, more for stacking. You open your drawer and find your own dream log, thinner than it used to be, still warm with memory. You flip to the first page, tracing the ink of your very first entry. Dreamed I was a teacup, empty, happy. You smile. Some historians argue that the decline of sleep culture in Edo offices marked the rise of a new kind of efficiency, one that favored speed over stillness, output over insight. But others believe the culture never disappeared. It just went underground. Into soft pauses, into tea sips, into moments when a clerk lingers too long at the window pretending to read the sky. Tomorrow, you'll explore those echoes, the aftershocks of nap culture in modern Japan, and how something called inamuri might be keeping the dream alive. But tonight, you fold the page gently, slide your log back into the drawer, and breathe. Because even in a world where sleep is no longer written into policy, you still remember how. And you still choose to. The city is louder now, car horns instead of ink brushes, neon signs instead of candlelight. But somewhere on a crowded Tokyo train car, a salaryman in a tailored suit leans slightly forward, eyes closed, breathing gently. He is not asleep. He is inamuri, literally present while sleeping. And in that quiet, head-bobbing moment, you recognize something ancient. A ghost of Edo. Because while scrolls have been replaced with spreadsheets, and lacquered nap desks have yielded to standing desks and ergonomic chairs, something from the old rhythm has endured. Not in offices, perhaps, but in people. Inamuri isn't just a cultural curiosity. It's a survival strategy, a signal of effort, a badge of belonging. If you're sleeping at your desk, it doesn't mean you're lazy. It means you've worked hard enough to deserve a nap. It means you're still part of the flow, even if you're horizontal. And yes, the seeds of this mindset were planted centuries ago, when naps were logged, when dreams were discussed, when lacquered desks forgave tired foreheads, when rest wasn't just allowed, it was honored. You step onto the modern street now. The light glints off glass instead of polished inkstone. But inside a second-floor cafe, you see a young student asleep over an open textbook, fingers still curled around a teacup. Her breath is slow, her notes unfinished. No one disturbs her. They understand. Some anthropologists argue that inamuri is Japan's practical answer to long hours, that it's about reclaiming rest in a relentless world. But others see it as something deeper, a quiet, inherited ritual, a whisper from the Edo office, a reminder that the body is not a machine and the mind cannot bloom without shade. Even now, modern companies hold meditation workshops. Some even install nap pods. But no technology will ever replace the grace of knowing when to pause and letting yourself actually do it. You sip your matcha latte, modern, yes, but bitter enough to feel ancient, and wonder how many strangers on this street are carrying quiet dreams in their pockets. Tomorrow you'll return to where it all began. Back to tatami, back to the desk, back to the breath between tasks. But tonight, let the traffic hum like old bells. Let the city lights flicker like candle shadows. And if your eyes close for a moment too long, let them, because wherever you are and whatever time it is, the nap still lives, and it remembers you. The door slides open with that familiar soft scrape. You step inside, and just like that, it's all here again. The first office, the quiet one, the tatami beneath your feet, the plum-scented air drifting through the bamboo slats, the brush resting in its cradle, the lacquered desk gleaming faintly in the afternoon light. Your old seat waits, not changed, not dusted, simply ready. No scrolls await your signature. No supervisor watches your posture. No bell will chime because this is not a return to duty. It's a return to rhythm. You kneel slowly, adjust your sleeves, fold one hand beneath the other, and then gently let your body lean forward until your cheek meets your sleeve and your breath finds its familiar pace. In, pause, out. This is the final nap, the one that holds every nap before it. The garden sleeps beyond the screen. The dream log lies closed beside you, its pages full, its margins soft with meaning. You don't need to add one more line, because your whole body is a closing stanza. You think just before sleep takes you. The desk remembers, the ink forgives, the nap continues. Outside, the wind passes through the plum trees one last time. A single blossom falls, lands gently on the edge of your desk, and does not move. No footsteps echo, no clocks tick, no one rushes. Now let everything go. The scrolls, the lists, the morning bells, the laughter, the dreams, the fox in the emperor's robes. All of it. Let it settle around you like an old Howery jacket. Let it hold you. Let it sleep. You are back where you began, not at the start, but at the stillness that made it all possible. You are the breath between brush strokes. You are the pause that keeps the story from ending too quickly. You are the nap. And now, close your eyes. Let go of everything. You've done enough. End of script. Sweet dreams.